When a West Virginia coal miner's tearful, on-air plea for help with his family's black lung benefits, slashed by new federal budget cuts, was publicly mocked by the White House, it triggered a quiet phone call from Barack Obama, not with a promise of a political fight, but with a plan for a compromise that would bypass Washington entirely. The clip didn't erupt. It seeped into the national consciousness. First, it was shared across West Virginia, from one coal town to another, a digital whisper of shared recognition. By morning, it had breached the borders of Appalachia, appearing in the feeds of nurses in Ohio, teachers in Pennsylvania, and truck drivers in Kentucky. There was no hashtag, no slickly edited package. There was only the face of a man gasping for breath, and the stark, simple question he posed to the nation. News anchors didn't know how to frame it. It wasn't a political scandal. It was a moment of raw human testimony that made the polished arguments of Washington feel hollow and obscene. 5 days before the interview that would echo from the hollows of West Virginia to the corridors of power, President Donald Trump sat behind the Resolute desk, a stack of leather-bound folders before him. He clicked the end of a thick, black marker, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet of the Oval Office. "This is the one," he declared to the two aides standing before him. "The Fiscal Responsibility and American Renewal Act. Sounds good, strong." He uncapped the marker and scrawled his signature across the bottom of the executive order that would enact the sweeping budget changes. "The media will scream about the cuts," he continued, a smirk playing on his lips. "They'll find some sad story, probably an actor, to cry on camera. But the people, the real people, they get it. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. We're making America rich again." One of the aides, a young man with a perpetually nervous expression, shifted his weight. "Sir, the initial projections show significant impacts on legacy entitlement programs, particularly the Black Lung Disability Trust Fund." Trump waved a dismissive hand, cutting him off. "Legacy means old. It means past. We're about the future. The fund is broke anyway. It's a jobs program for lawyers. We're cutting the fat. It's what I was elected to do." He capped the marker with a decisive snap. For him, the issue was closed. The signature was on the paper. The country would move on. Miles away, in his private office in Washington, D.C., Barack Obama scrolled through a briefing on his own tablet. He saw the headlines about the new budget, the same ones Trump had predicted. He read the analyses, the projections of how many thousands of people would be affected by the cuts to various programs. He felt a familiar tightening in his chest, a mix of frustration and weary resignation. The director of his foundation, a sharp woman named Amara Vance, stood by the window. "Are we going to say anything?" she asked, her voice neutral. Obama shook his head, setting the tablet down on his desk. "No, what would we say? I told you so." "That doesn't help anyone." He leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant. "Our mission isn't to be the opposition. It's to build what comes next. We focus on our programs, on the young leaders we're training. We can't get dragged back into the daily political mud wrestling. That's a losing game. For us, and for the country." He was resolute. His presidency was over. He had run his race. Now, his role was different, quieter, more focused on the long-term work of civic engagement. He would not be a shadow president, a constant commentator on his successor. He would let his work speak for itself. He believed in this path. He had to. Jedediah Kane did not want to be on television. At 58, all he wanted was the quiet of his small house, the hum of his wife Alara's quilting machine, and the strength to walk to the mailbox without feeling like he was drowning. He sat opposite Coralie Vance, the host of Good Morning West Virginia, under the warm studio lights of WCHS-TV in Charleston. A thin, clear tube ran from his nostrils to a portable oxygen concentrator that hummed softly at his feet. His hands, gnarled and thick from a lifetime of running a continuous miner machine underground, rested on his knees. Coralie was known for being gentle. She didn't ambush her guests. She had grown up in Mingo County. She knew these men. "Jedediah," she began, her voice soft. "Thank you for coming in. Can you tell folks what it was like? 35 years you spent in the mines?" Jedediah nodded, taking a slow, deliberate breath. "It was a job," he said, his voice a low rasp. "It was dark. And loud. But it was proud work. You went down there, 1,000 feet under the earth, and you knew the lights were on back home because of what you were doing. You were part of something. We powered America." He spoke without self-pity, stating it as a simple fact. Coralie let the silence sit for a moment before she guided the conversation to the present. "A lot of folks are talking about the new federal budget, and it's had a direct impact on your family, hasn't it? On the benefits that help you manage your progressive, massive fibrosis, your black lung." Jedediah's jaw tightened. He looked down at his hands, then back at her. It's been hard," he started, his voice wavering for the first time. "The fund, they cut the payments. The monthly check we got, the one that paid for this machine," he patted the oxygen concentrator. "And the medicines, the inhalers, it's been cut by 70%, just like that. A letter in the mail." Coralie leaned forward slightly. "What does that mean for you and your wife, Elara, on a day-to-day basis?" This was the question that broke him. Jedediah's composure, the stoic pride of a man who had faced down collapsing rock and explosive gas, crumbled under the weight of this simple, domestic reality. His eyes welled with tears. He tried to speak, but his breath hitched. He shook his head, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "It's just last week, Elara." She sat at the kitchen table with the bills. "We had enough to pay for a refill on my oxygen tanks, or to get the brakes fixed on our truck, not both." He took a ragged breath, the sound amplified by the studio microphone. The tears now fell freely down his weathered cheeks. "She needs that truck to get to her cleaning job. It's the only other money we got." She looked at me and she said, "Jed, maybe you can just use less of the oxygen for a few weeks." The studio was utterly silent. The cameraman held the shot, a tight close-up on Jedediah's face. The raw pain was magnetic, impossible to look away from. "We ain't asking for a handout," he said, his voice choked with emotion, looking directly into the camera lens as if it were the eye of the nation itself. "We're just asking not to be forgotten. We powered this country. We gave our lungs, our health. Is this how it ends? Watching your wife cry over a pharmacy bill because she has to choose whether her husband gets to breathe or not?" He said nothing more. He just sat there, weeping silently as the program cut to a commercial. In the control room, no one spoke. The director simply put his head in his hands. He knew he had just broadcast something that could not be taken back. The clip was online before Jedediah and Elara had even finished the quiet, tense drive home to their small house nestled in a Boone County hollow. It started as a trickle. The station's Facebook page saw a few dozen shares. Then, a few hundred. People weren't adding angry political commentary. They were just writing, "This is my dad," or "This is my neighbor," or simply, "Watch this." By that evening, it had escaped the gravity of local news. A political reporter for a national online outlet saw it and posted it on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. That's when the rocket fuel ignited. It landed in the feeds of millions, a stark 2-minute and 37-second rebuke to the bloodless language of budgets and fiscal policy. Aboard Air Force One, flying to a rally in Florida, President Trump was in a buoyant mood. He was scrolling through favorable headlines on his phone when an aide, the same nervous young man from the Oval Office, tentatively approached him. "Mr. President, there's a clip you should probably see. It's getting a lot of traction." He held out a tablet displaying the video of Jedediah Kane. Trump watched, his expression impassive. He listened to the story of the bills, the truck, the oxygen. When the clip ended, he handed the tablet back. "Sad. Very sad," he said, his tone flat, as if commenting on a poorly played golf shot. "But that's what happens when you have to make the country rich again." The churches should be helping him out. That's what churches are for. Now get me the rally speech. I want to add a line about the fake news media. Turned away. The miner's televised grief, already a forgotten footnote in his day. The aide's comment, "The churches should be helping him out," was anonymously sourced to a reporter on the plane within the hour. The story now had its second act. The plea, and the dismissal. In his Washington home, Barack Obama was reading a book when his phone buzzed. It was a text from Amara Vance, his foundation director. It contained only a link and 3 words. "You need to see this." He tapped the link, and Jedediah Kane's face filled his screen. He watched the entire clip, his body perfectly still. He saw the pride, the pain, and the final, devastating question. He felt that familiar tightening in his chest again, but this time it was sharper, more acute. He opened another browser tab and saw the headlines about the White House response. "The churches should be helping him out." He closed the tablet and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet, tree-lined street. The vow he had made to himself to stay out of the fight felt distant, a principle conceived in a time of peace that was now being tested by an act of war. Not a war of politics, but a war on dignity. He thought of his own grandfather, of the quiet pride and the uncomplaining endurance of that generation. He thought of the promises a country makes to those who build it, the implicit contract that says your work, your sacrifice, will be honored. He stood there for a long time, the silence of the house pressing in on him. Alara Kane's impossible choice echoed in his mind, the oxygen or the brakes. It was a brutal calculus, one that should have no place in the country he had led. The decision to stay quiet was a clean, logical principle, but the image of Jedediah Kane's tears was a messy, human reality. And as the night deepened, he knew that one of them would have to give way. The phone call was not a matter of if, but when. He found Michelle in their sitting room, a cup of tea in her hands. She saw the look on his face immediately. "Jedediah Kane," she said. It wasn't a question. He nodded, sinking into the armchair opposite her. "I saw it," he said. "I saw the president's response." She watched him, her expression a mixture of love and deep concern. She knew that look. It was the same one he'd had after Sandy Hook, after the Charleston church shooting. It was the look he got when the abstract cruelty of politics became a concrete human tragedy. "Barack, don't," she said softly, though she knew her words were likely futile. "Cree, you know what happens the moment you step into this. It's what he wants. He wants to draw you back into the fight. It will become about you and him, and that man, that poor man in West Virginia, will be completely forgotten. You'll be the story." He ran a hand over his face, the exhaustion of a conflict he hadn't even entered yet settling on him. "I know," he said. "I've been telling myself that for the last hour." Amara said the same thing. "Logically, you're both right. But I keep seeing that man's face. I keep hearing him talk about his wife having to choose." He looked at her, his voice low. "Michelle, we have a foundation. Its purpose is to inspire, empower, and connect people to change their world. That's what we wrote. That's what we tell people. What does it mean if we see a moment like this? A moment that is crying out for a different kind of answer, and we do nothing because it's politically inconvenient?" She didn't have an immediate response. She knew he was right. She also knew the cost. The moment he engaged, the machine would roar to life. The attacks, the lies, the vitriol would all be aimed squarely at him, at them. Their quiet, post-presidential life would be over. The peace they had carefully constructed would be shattered. "So what are you going to do?" she finally asked. "Not what he expects," Obama said, a flicker of the old, determined strategist in his eyes. "I'm not going to hold a press conference. I'm not going to issue a statement condemning him. I'm not going to play his game." He leaned forward, the plan beginning to form not as a political strategy, but as a moral solution. "I'm going to make a phone call, and I'm going to see if we can't solve the problem instead of just winning the argument." The next morning, Obama was in his foundation's office before anyone else. He sat with Amara Vance and a small team of senior staff. "I'm not interested in a political response," he told them, preempting the discussion he knew they were prepared to have. "I'm interested in a practical one. This isn't about Trump. This is about Jedediah Kane and the thousands of other miners like him. The government created a problem. It's clear they have no interest in solving it. So we're going to go around them." He started pacing the room, the energy crackling. "Amara, I want a list of every major healthcare-focused charity in the country. The big ones. I also want a list of private philanthropists who have a history of funding health initiatives, particularly in rural or underserved areas. And I want to know who the largest private employers are in West Virginia, Kentucky, and Pennsylvania. The ones who aren't in the coal industry." The team scrambled, keyboards clicking, phones being dialed. The shift in mission was sudden but absolute. For months, they had been focused on long-term programs, leadership summits, educational scholarships, community garden grants. Now they were a rapid response unit targeting a single, acute crisis. "We're not going to just donate money," Obama continued. "We're going to build a coalition. We're going to create a new fund, a non-governmental one, specifically for this purpose. The Appalachian Health Fund will seed it with a significant grant from our foundation, but the power will be in the partnership." He stopped pacing and looked at his team. The White House said the churches should handle it. That was meant as a dismissal. But he stumbled on a kernel of truth. The solution to this isn't in Washington. It's in the community. It's in the private sector. It's in the hands of citizens. He just doesn't realize he's giving us the moral authority to prove it. The first phone call was the hardest. Obama sat at the head of the long, polished table in his foundation's boardroom. A list of names and numbers in front of him. He looked at the first one. Dr. Alastair Finch, the CEO of the American Health Trust, the nation's largest and most influential healthcare charity. Finch was a notoriously cautious, by-the-book administrator who prized his organization's political neutrality above all else. A single misstep, a whiff of partisanship, could jeopardize the group's federal grants and corporate partnerships. Amara had warned him. Alastair won't even take a meeting if he thinks it's about politics. Obama took a breath and dialed the number himself. "Alastair, it's Barack Obama." The silence on the other end was palpable. "Mr. President," Finch finally said, his voice tight with surprise and suspicions. "This is an honor. To what do I owe the pleasure?" "I'll get right to it, Alastair. I saw an interview with a man from West Virginia named Jedediah Kane there. A coal miner with advanced black lung disease." "I'm aware of the situation, yes," Finch said carefully. "A deeply unfortunate case." "Unfortunate is one word for it," Obama said, his tone even. "A systemic failure is another. My question for you is this. What is the purpose of the American Health Trust, if not to stand in the breach when a system fails? Your mission statement talks about providing a health safety net for all Americans. Right now, that net has a hole in it the size of Appalachia." Finch cleared his throat. "Mr. President, with all due respect, our role is to work with our government partners to supplement existing programs, not to replace them. Engaging in what could be perceived as a political rebuke to a new federal policy could compromise our ability to—" Obama cut him off, but his voice remained calm. "This isn't about a political rebuke. It's about a moral response. The White House has publicly stated that this is a matter for private citizens and churches. You, Alastair, are the head of the largest private health organization in the country. They have, inadvertently, given you the mandate. They have thrown down a gauntlet and challenged the private sector to do what they will not. Are you going to pick it up? We're starting a fund, seeding it, with $1 million from our foundation. We're not asking you to condemn anyone. We're asking you to do your job. We're asking you to help us save lives." There was a long pause. Obama could hear the frantic calculations happening on the other end of the line. The weighing of risk versus mission. $1 million? Finch asked. His voice changed. The administrator replaced by the fundraiser. "As a start," Obama confirmed, "we're building a coalition. This is a chance to demonstrate a new model for rapid, targeted aid, free from bureaucracy. This is a chance to show what the American Health Trust can do when it is truly unleashed. Or, you can release a statement about how unfortunate the situation is. The choice is yours." He let the challenge hang in the air. Finally, Finch spoke. "Send me the proposals. The second call was to Julian Croft, a reclusive tech billionaire who had made a fortune in data analytics and now spent his time funding hyper-specific, evidence-based philanthropic ventures. Croft was famously apolitical, viewing both parties with equal disdain as inefficient, irrational actors. He answered his phone on the second ring. Croft. Mr. Croft, this is Barack Obama. I know, Croft said, his voice devoid of any surprise or deference. I have caller ID. I assume you're calling about the miner. I've already had 3 other nonprofits call me about him this morning. The answer is no. You haven't heard my pitch yet, Obama said, a slight smile in his voice. He knew this would be a different kind of negotiation. The pitch is irrelevant, Croft countered. This is an emotional, politically motivated event. My philanthropy is based on data and scalable solutions, not on viral videos. Funding this is like putting a Band-Aid on a dam break. It solves one man's problem, but it doesn't fix the system. I agree, Obama said, surprising Croft, which is why I'm not calling to ask you to put on a Band-Aid. I'm calling to ask you to help me build a better hospital. We're not just helping Jedediah Kane, we're creating a targeted fund, the Appalachian Health Fund, to provide a bridge for every miner affected by this specific policy change. But more importantly, we are treating this as a pilot program. You're a data guy, Julian. This is the ultimate data gathering opportunity. We will track every dollar, every patient outcome, every administrative cost. We will prove, with verifiable data, that a private, coalition-based model can deliver aid faster, cheaper, and more effectively than a government bureaucracy. We will give you a complete, transparent data set that you can use to inform your other investments for the next decade. This isn't charity, it's a proof of concept for a new kind of social enterprise. Croft was silent for a full 30 seconds. Who else is in? He asked. I just spoke to Alastair Finch at AHT, Obama said. He's reviewing the proposal. Finch is a bureaucrat, Croft said dismissively, but he has infrastructure. Okay, here's my offer. I'll match your foundation's seed money, and I will provide, pro bono, a team from my company to build the data and logistics platform to manage the fund. But I want full access to the data, no restrictions. You've got a deal, Obama said instantly. The third call was the one he dreaded most. Garrett Shaw, CEO of the Charleston General Hospital System, the largest private employer in West Virginia. Shaw was a lifelong Republican, a major Trump donor, and a man who had been openly critical of the Affordable Care Act. Contacting him was a huge risk. A rejection from Shaw could kill the project's local credibility. A leak from him could turn the entire effort into a political circus before it even began. Obama dialed the number. Garrett, Barack Obama. Well, I'll be, Shaw's voice boomed over the phone, thick with a West Virginia accent. To what do I owe the honor, Mr. President? Come to gloat a little about our current leadership? Obama ignored the jibe. No, Garrett, I'm calling about your emergency rooms. In about a month, they're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to have hundreds of men with advanced respiratory disease showing up because they can no longer afford their oxygen, their inhalers, their primary care physicians. It's going to be a public health catastrophe, and it's going to happen right on your doorstep. Your hospital will bear the financial and human cost. Shaw's jovial tone vanished. We're aware of the situation. Good, Obama replied. Then you know this isn't about who sits in the White House. This is about Boone County. This is about your neighbors. My foundation is partnering with the American Health Trust and other donors to create a private fund to cover the benefits these men have lost. We have the money. Julian Croft's team is building the platform to administer it. But we need a local healthcare partner to handle the delivery of care, to be the point of contact on the ground. We need you, Garrett. And why in God's name would I partner with you? Shaw asked, suspicion dripping from every word. You're the political enemy. The press would have a field day. Because it's good business, Obama said simply. First, we'll be paying you for the care your hospitals provide to these miners. This fund will turn a non-paying emergency room crisis into a fully funded outpatient program. Second, this is about your community. You live there. Your employees live there. These minors are their fathers and grandfathers. Showing that your hospital is stepping up to solve a problem that Washington created? That's not political, Garrett. That's leadership. You can either be the hero of this story or another victim of Washington's dysfunction. I don't care about the credit. You can announce the whole thing yourself. Just help us get it done. The line went quiet. Shaw was a businessman, and Obama had framed the argument in the only language that mattered. Not politics, but profit and public relations. Send me the proposal, Shaw said gruffly. No promises. But Obama knew he had him. The coalition was real. While Obama worked the phones in private, the public square was a raging bonfire. The debate had devolved into a predictable partisan slugfest. But then, a new voice cut through the noise. Eleanor Vance was a conservative columnist for a major newspaper, a woman of impeccable intellectual credentials who believed in small government and fiscal discipline. Her columns were typically dense arguments about tax policy and regulatory burdens. But the Thursday after Jedediah Kane's interview, her column was different. The headline was, "Conservatism is not cruelty." She did not attack the budget cut itself. Instead, she savaged the president's response. "The principle of fiscal responsibility is a cornerstone of conservative thought," she wrote. "But it is meant to be a tool for human flourishing, not an excuse for casual cruelty. To watch a man who gave his health to power our nation weep on television, and to dismiss his plea with a flippant remark about churches, is not conservatism. It is an act of profound disrespect, not just for that man, but for the very idea of dignified labor that conservatives claim to champion. A balanced budget cannot be achieved by bankrupting our national character. The president's callousness has created a moral vacuum. He has abdicated his responsibility not just as a leader, but as a fellow citizen. And a moral vacuum, as nature and politics have taught us, will always be filled." The column was a bombshell. It exploded across the political landscape, giving cover to Republicans who were privately appalled by Trump's comments, but publicly terrified of crossing him. It reframed the debate. Now, it wasn't just about Democrats versus Republicans. It was about decency versus cruelty. Eleanor Vance had, in 1,000 carefully chosen words, built a bridge for principled conservatives to oppose the president's behavior without betraying their ideology. The ground had fundamentally shifted. The cost of opening this new front was immediate and personal. Late one night, Obama was in his home office, a dozen open browser tabs in front of him, trying to coordinate logistics between Croft's tech team in Silicon Valley and Shaw's hospital administrators in Charleston. Legal documents, funding agreements, and privacy protocols were strewn across his desk. He was running on 4 hours of sleep, fueled by coffee and a relentless sense of urgency. The news alerts on his phone were a steady stream of venom. One headline read, "Obama's shadow government. Ex-president uses dark money to undermine Trump." Another featured a pundit yelling that Obama was using a sick minor as a political pawn. Threats, vile and specific, were flooding the foundation's social media pages. Michelle appeared in the doorway, a plate with a sandwich on it in her hand. "I thought you might be hungry," she said softly. She set the plate on the corner of his desk and looked at the exhaustion etched on his face. "I told you this would happen, Barack." He sighed, rubbing his eyes. "I know you did. And you were right." He took a bite of the sandwich, chewing slowly. "It's just, I'm on the phone all day, trying to convince people to do something that should be a given. I'm trying to patch together a basic human safety net with private money, and they're out there calling me a traitor for it. It's exhausting." He gestured to the screen. They don't see Jedediah Kane anymore. They just see me. They see a target. "They see what he's told them to see," Michelle said, her hand resting on his shoulder. "But you can't let that distract you. You started this for that man and his family. You have to finish it for them. Don't read the comments. Just do the work." He nodded, leaning into her touch for a moment. Her voice was an anchor in the storm. The work was the only thing that mattered. With the core partners in place, the Appalachian Health Fund moved from idea to reality with stunning speed. Croft's team built a secure, simple online portal where minors or their families could apply for aid. Shaw's hospital system set up a dedicated hotline and assigned case managers to handle the applications and coordinate care. Finch's charity provided the legal framework and financial oversight. Within 2 weeks, they had a functioning system ready to accept applications. The pledges they had secured totaled over $15 million. All of it was done in private, away from the glare of the media. The final piece, the most important one, was still missing. Obama sat in his office, the list of names in front of him. But this time, he was only looking at one, Jedediah Kane, him. He had debated making this call for days. It felt intrusive. He didn't want the man to feel like a prop in someone else's plan. But he knew he had to do it. He had to close the circle. He picked up the phone and dialed the number Alara Kane had given to the local news station. She answered on the first ring, her voice wary. "Mrs. Kane, this is Barack Obama." There was a sharp intake of breath, then silence. "Hold on," she whispered. He heard muffled sounds, and then a man's raspy voice came on the line. "Hello? Mr. Kane, my name is Barack Obama. I saw your interview on the news last week." "Yeah," Jedediah said, his voice flat, exhausted. "Seems like everyone did." "I know the last couple of weeks must have been overwhelming," Obama said gently, "and I apologize if this call is an intrusion. I'm not calling for any political reason. I just wanted you to know that you have been heard, that what you said mattered." Hey. Jedediah was quiet. He had been bombarded by reporters, by cranks, by people offering prayers and people making threats. He didn't know what to believe anymore. "Mr. Kane," Obama continued, "my foundation has been working with some partners, including the Charleston General Hospital system. We've put together a private fund to cover the health benefits that were cut. It's for you, and for every other minor in your position. Alara can call Charleston General tomorrow morning. There's a woman there expecting her call. They will get your oxygen delivered. They will cover your prescriptions. There's no catch. It's done." For a long moment, the only sound on the line was the soft, rhythmic puffing of the oxygen concentrator. When Jedediah finally spoke, his voice was a broken whisper. Are you serious?" "Yes, sir," Obama said. "I am." Jedediah started to cry. It was not the desperate, angry weeping of the television studio, but a quiet, shuddering sob of disbelief and relief. "Thank you," he managed to say. "God bless you. Thank you." Obama closed his eyes. The political noise, the threats, the exhaustion fading away. This was the only voice that mattered. This was the reason for the fight. The day after Obama's call, Alara Kane, her hands trembling slightly, dialed the number for Charleston General Hospital. She asked for the name she'd been given, a woman named Rhonda. She expected a complicated phone tree, a long hold time, skepticism. Instead, the operator patched her through immediately. "This is Rhonda," a warm voice said. "I've been expecting your call, Mrs. Kane. I have all of Jedediah's information right here. His new oxygen tanks will be delivered this afternoon, and we've already transferred his prescriptions to our pharmacy for fulfillment. You can pick them up anytime. It's all taken care of." Alara began to cry, leaning against the kitchen wall for support. "I don't understand," she said. "It can't be this easy." "Sometimes," Rhonda replied softly, "it is." The public announcement came 2 days later. It did not happen in Washington. There was no presidential seal, no White House briefing room. Instead, it took place in the glass and steel atrium of Charleston General Hospital. Standing at the podium was not Barack Obama, but Garrett Shaw, the hospital's Republican CEO. To his left stood Dr. Alastair Finch of the American Health Trust. Shaw, a man who had once called the Affordable Care Act socialism, tapped the microphone. "As a lifelong West Virginian, I've seen Washington make a lot of promises to our people," he began, his booming voice filling the room of local reporters. "And I've seen a lot of those promises broken. Recently, many of our friends and neighbors, the men who built this country from the ground up, were left behind by a bureaucratic decision made hundreds of miles away. Well, we've decided we're not going to wait for Washington to fix it. He went on to announce the formation of the Appalachian Health Fund, describing it as a private coalition of healthcare providers, national charities, and concerned citizens. He laid out the details, the $15 million starting point, the partnership with the American Health Trust, the data platform provided by Julian Croft's company. He never once mentioned Barack Obama's name. When he finished, Alastair Finch stepped up and spoke of the moral imperative of the private sector to act. The message was seamless, powerful, and, most importantly, it was local. It was a story of a community saving itself. The reaction from the White House was one of confused fury. President Trump had been prepared for Obama to hold a press conference, to attack him directly. That was a fight he knew how to win. But this was different. He couldn't attack Garrett Shaw, a major donor and a respected business leader in a state that had overwhelmingly supported him. He couldn't attack the American Health Trust without looking like he was against charity. He was trapped. His press secretary was sent out to face the cameras and delivered a rambling, contradictory statement. She tried to dismiss the fund as a small, insignificant gesture, but then in the next breath attempted to claim credit for it, saying, "The President is pleased to see that his call for churches and private citizens to step up has been so effective." The clumsy attempt to spin the narrative only highlighted their powerlessness. They had been completely outmaneuvered. The story wasn't about them anymore. That afternoon, a single, quiet statement appeared on the Obama Foundation's website. It was posted without fanfare. There was no accompanying video, no email blast. It was titled simply, "On Citizenship." The text was brief. It praised the leadership of Garrett Shaw, the generosity of Julian Croft, and the dedication of Dr. Alastair Finch. It celebrated the resilience of the people of Appalachia. It never mentioned Donald Trump. It never mentioned the budget cuts. It ended with a simple paragraph that defined the entire 2-week struggle. "Some problems are not about politics," it read. "They are about our duties to one another as Americans. When government fails to uphold that duty, it falls to citizens to remind us of who we are." Today, a coalition of Americans from all backgrounds and beliefs did just that. They chose compassion over conflict and solutions over slogans. They reminded us that the true source of this nation's strength is not found in its halls of power, but in the character and conscience of its people. This is our nation at its best. 3 weeks later, the media storm had moved on. The Appalachian Health Fund was no longer a headline. It was simply a fact. In a small community clinic just outside of Beckley, a 21-year-old volunteer named Kaylin sorted through a stack of application forms. Before, her work had felt like a hopeless battle against a tide of despair. She helped people fill out forms for government aid that she knew would likely be rejected. She listened to stories of pain and poverty that she had no power to fix. A deep cynicism had begun to take root in her. She had started to believe that the system was irrevocably broken, that the country's divisions were too deep to heal. That morning, she sat across from an elderly man named Silas, another retired miner whose hands were permanently stained with coal dust. He was a widower, and his daughter, who lived out of state, had told him about the new fund. He was skeptical, his pride warring with his need. "I ain't never taken a handout in my life," he told Kaylin, his voice raspy. "This isn't a handout, Silas," she said gently, her voice confident in a way it hadn't been a month ago. "This is a debt being paid. You earned this." She walked him through the simple, one-page form. She told him his medications would be covered. She told him a technician would be out to service his oxygen equipment the next day. She watched as decades of hard-bitten pride melted away, replaced by the profound relief of a man who had been given a reprieve. He gripped her hand, his eyes wet. "Thank you, child," he said. After Silas left, Kaylin walked to the window of the clinic. The waiting room was full, but the atmosphere was different now. The air of desperation was gone, replaced by a quiet, anxious hope. She saw not a line of victims, but a line of neighbors being cared for by other neighbors. The fund was more than just money for medicine. It was a signal. It was proof that someone, somewhere, was listening. It was proof that even when the official channels were blocked, there were other paths. It was proof that a small group of determined people could, in fact, change things. That evening, Kaylin sat at her computer and pulled up the application page for the nursing program at West Virginia University. For years, she had told herself it was too expensive, too difficult, that there was no point in trying. But as she looked at the hopeful faces in the clinic waiting room, she realized that was no longer an excuse. The quiet, determined action she had witnessed had inspired her own. She began to type, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The fight for the soul of the country, she now understood, wasn't just one in the headlines or in the halls of power. It was one here, in the quiet decision to fill out an application, to dedicate a life to service, to pick up the tools of healing and get to work. What is the true measure of a leader's power? Is it the ability to command attention and dominate the news cycle? Or the ability to inspire quiet, effective action in others? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And for more stories that dig deeper than the headlines, don't forget to subscribe.